Good evening and welcome to tonight's show. I am your host, Tina Dawson, and we are on True Blue Designs Presents the Inside Perspective. This is week 5 of our March anniversary celebration. This month, we have been in business for 12 years, and we have had a ball celebrating. We have had comedians all month. And today we have a special guest. Now, you met the comedians, but tonight we're going to meet the owner of a comedy club. So before we bring him on, I just want to say that it has been a blast this month to celebrate with you. I thank you for liking and sharing the broadcast. The purpose of the broadcast is to educate, encourage, and inspire you. The people that I have on the show are clients that I have met within the 12 years. And I created a platform so that they're able to tell who they are, what they do, and give the inside perspective of what they know. So I'm going to suggest that you use these videos as a reference point, whether you need a bookkeeper, a CPA, a media production person. You can find qualified people in our library of videos. So I just want to thank you again for liking and sharing. I thank you for being on tonight. If this is your first time, you are in for a treat. You're going to leave educated. I promise you that, if nothing else. So last week and a couple of weeks before that, we had contest winners. And these were people who were engaged in the show and they liked and they shared. So last week's winners, I think last week was the 24th. So the 17th of March, those winners are David Jeter, Gregory Skeeter Brown. You two were last week's winners, if I'm correct. I'm trying to keep up, to be honest. So continue to like and share and comment tonight. This is the last night for the winners. We're also celebrating tonight for, this is our last night, celebrating our 12-year anniversary. So make sure that you like, comment, and share and be engaged in the show. Let us know, give us some feedback. It's a dialogue, especially with the guest. So I want you to really connect with the guest. Before we move forward, I also want to give special thank yous to a couple of people. We've had some people that have been with us since day one. They have been very instrumental to our success. And I just want to give them a shout out and say thank you. All of them will be sent our beautiful True Blue Design mugs. And I want to give a shout out to Rebecca Johnson. She has not missed not one show. So thank you for your support, Rebecca. Rondell Wortham, Damon Dawson, which is my son. I'd like to thank you for your support. Trey Johnson, he has been on just about almost all the shows. And I also want to give 2 additional thank yous. One is to Christopher Columbus. He set up all the comedians to come in for the month to celebrate our anniversary. And I want to say thank you to Sean Kilgore, who is my hairstylist. She has been very engaged and instrumental in the show's success. So I just want to say thank you to all those people. Now, without further ado, I cannot wait for this interview. You know him as the owner of the Atlanta staple business, the Uptown Comedy Corner. And to me, he is such a special friend. But before we bring him on, we're going to show you his new video for Uptown Comedy Corner.
Who is it? You saucy.
Action when ready.
Wait, ready? What the hell I'm supposed to say? Your damn show got a interview.
What's up, y'all? This your girl, Kelly Kells. I'm always live in effect at Uptown Comedy Corner, the only black-owned and operated comedy club in Atlanta. So if you're not here, where you at? She funny as let the people talk.
Help me give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, Mr. Angelo Sykes.
Hey, how we
Hey,
doing?
Angelo, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Great to be here. Appreciate you inviting me.
No, thank you for saying yes. I said, now, if I'm going to have on comedians, I
Right.
have to make the finale the staple business owner of Atlanta, Mr. Angelo Sykes.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm
How's
honored.
how's the family?
Everybody's doing well. Everybody's doing well. Kids are springing up like, it's
Yes.
amazing. It's amazing. You know what I mean? So I got an 18-year-old now in college and
Wow.
kid about to be a senior in high school and one about to start high school. So it's amazing.
I did not know that you and I had a child the same age.
Yeah, how about that?
I did not know that. But
Yeah, it's amazing.
We're gonna have to connect them two together.
How about that?
Yeah, because
That's cool.
you need to know people.
I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that intro, that video. I saw it on your page and I took it. I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. I appreciate it. Hey, that's good. That's good.
That
Yeah, we
is
just had that. We just
nice.
had that done when Vivica Fox was here. So that
Okay.
was real cool. Yeah, it's real cool.
Yeah. Whoever did that, kudos. It was
Yeah, he
nice.
did a great job. He did a great job. He came in, went right to work, man. He sent it to me right after the weekend was over with. I didn't even know what to
Wow.
expect, but he did a phenomenal job. I told others. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good thing. That's another one of those good connections.
Yeah. Look, classic connections.
That's classic connection. That's right.
Look, that's gonna be your next show.
How about that? Yeah, absolutely.
So, we're going to start off the interview by you telling the viewers a little bit about. I mean, I know, but we got to tell you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, um, Angelo Sykes, been doing in business now for quite a while. Have my two businesses currently, security company been going on for 25 years and Uptown for a better part of 18. We're at an 18-year mark now. So
Really?
yeah, family man, married, got my boys, all boys. Um, Real happy about them. They're all honor students. Super excited about those guys and their growth. So
Hmm.
um, that's my brief synopsis. I mean, shoot away. Ask the question. I don't like to talk about me all the time. So
Look, I know that's why I love getting you on the show because tonight, Angelo, is all about you.
yeah. How about that? That's all right.
Okay, so originally, where are you from?
So I'm originally from Virginia, Portsmouth, Virginia.
Okay.
Um, so my mom's military, so we lived there for quite I grew up there, and
Hmm.
but when she joined the army, she came back from her training and all that good stuff. She took me and my brothers. I have two older brothers. One is Ray. He's in Midway, Georgia, right outside Savannah.
Okay.
And my other brother Reggie, he's still in Virginia. And then I have my sister. She lives here. So anyway, she came and grabbed. At the time, it was just my brothers, and she came and got us, and we moved off with her to Fort Hood, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we stayed in Fort Hood, and that was our first time, like, really away. We lived in Massachusetts briefly. We went in Philadelphia briefly, but that was the first time we actually just moved away from Virginia, and kind of never looked back. Really, Virginia just became it's our home. It's where we're from. It's where
Hmm.
most of the family's at. But we were on the road. We left there and moved to Germany. Yeah, we moved to Germany for 3.5 years, and that was probably one of the greatest experiences, of my
Hmm.
life growing up, in another country amongst other people.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of things that were happening, probably here we didn't have to experience there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a great time, but you just learned so much. You got to see so much.
Hmm.
You know, we traveled. We can say travel the world. We could literally say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We traveled to Italy, to Paris, to everywhere. You know what I mean? We were ice. You know, we were skiing in different states and whatnot, countries rather. So it was cool. It was a great life.
Yeah, and military children that do that, they become to me more well rounded because
Yeah.
you've experienced so many different cultures.
Different cultures and just people in general when you have to move so often, you know what I mean, when you're the new kid, all the time, you know what I mean, having to adjust to that, you know what I mean, to that life. But then because you're in that military environment, you get to meet a whole bunch of other new kids and help
Right.
them adjust, and you know what I mean.
Hmm.
So yeah, it helped me better to adapt to any kind of environment without a doubt.
Okay. So then you moved to Atlanta. You were living here before you went to college here.
Yeah, so one of my mom's last duty stations was at Fort Stewart, Georgia. When we
Okay.
came from Germany, we went back to Virginia for about a year or so. Then we
Mhm.
moved to Dallas, Texas. We lived in Dallas for a couple of years. Then we left Dallas, and she got stationed to Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Okay.
And Fort Stewart, it's like 30 minutes outside of Savannah.
Hmm.
And that's how that was how I got to Georgia. And so I grew up. We stayed in Hinesville for, I guess, I moved there my 10th grade year,
Hmm.
and until I graduated Bradwell Institute. Yeah,
Okay.
so and that's how my migration to Atlanta, began, because I left high school to go to West Georgia for college. You know,
Okay.
and then the rest is, that's how I hung around these parts.
Okay. So you went to West Georgia. What was your major?
I was a criminal justice major. I had a minor in psychology. I went there to play football. I was there on the football team for the first couple of years, and and then with football, it started seeing where, I was 5'5", about 155, 160, and I started realizing, that NFL dream really may not be realistic, Angelo. you're 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 not gonna grow, my brother. So you better start looking for other options in life.
Goodness.
so so reality started sitting in. So we started
Mhm.
exploring other options.
Okay. All right. And then what else did you do at West Georgia?
Well, as a freshman, man, in 1989, I became a proud member of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity incorporated. You know, um, it's really cool. Especially doing it as a freshman. I really got to enjoy
Wow.
the full,
Yeah.
4 years of Sigmadom. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
I'm not just with the fraternity, but even with the football team.
Right.
I got guys there that, like, truly my brothers. But my fraternity brothers, man, it's like, we can still call each other up right now and talk as if we hadn't
Yeah.
stopped. So, what I mean? It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was it about Phi Beta Sigma that had you to choose them?
So, being a football player, you kind of, you know, especially at West Georgia, what I mean? It was like when you're on the yard, what I mean? It was like the fraternities, the sororities, and the football
Mhm.
team. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
football team had their own space.
Yeah.
So, but naturally, you had guys from the football team who started migrating to some of those fraternities, and so we were approached by, a couple different ones as freshmen. You know what I mean? Naturally, Q's came calling, and but it was something about, my brother Richie Calhoun. Brother Richie Calhoun would just always talk to me. Richie wasn't a football player. You know what I mean? He was
No.
just, so I didn't even know, you just never know who was watching you. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So, and he just approached me and was like, started talking about, the frat, and I was like, yeah, I never really thought about a fraternity, to be honest with you. That's not something we talked about in high school or nothing like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
I have family I had an uncle that was an alpha, but other than that, it wasn't really a conversation. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But Richie approached me and just started talking to me, and I started just checking the guys out. Then you naturally have people like Sham and back there in Benyon, and what I
Yeah.
mean, some of the old
Yeah.
heads, what I
Yeah.
mean. So everybody started chit chatting a little bit, and I was like, okay, these cats are kind of cool, what I mean. They weren't, you kind of start seeing the other fraternities where they were grouped up. What I mean, they
Hmm.
had certain ways they acted and all that stuff, but the Sigmas were always individuals.
Yeah.
What I mean, and that's what I liked about them. They were frat. They were Sigmas, but they were football players, they were basketball players, but they were all individuals. What I mean, they didn't feel like they had to act a certain way.
Right.
What I mean, and that's what I like. So that's what drew me to them.
Okay. See, I didn't know that my LB was behind it.
Yeah. Richie was the one who started. You know what I
I
mean?
did not know that.
Richie, Sham, Scan, they all kind of,
Look,
yeah,
next time we meet up, we'll have a conversation.
yeah, that's right. Oh, Richie
So,
Rich.
so after West Georgia, let's take everybody on a trip. So after
Okay.
West Georgia, what did you do?
So when I graduated West Georgia, I one of the things I did after stop playing ball was join the ROTC at
Hmm.
West Georgia. And so with that, I did all the ROTC training, what have you. Every summer I had to go away, and so when I graduated at West Georgia in 1992, I was also commissioned as a second lieutenant the same day.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool because my whole family was able to come down, and my grandparents, who all have gone on to heaven now, but they were all
Hmm.
there, and
Hmm.
what I mean, my grandmother, who was supposed to be my mom, pinning me on, and the colonel. But to know my grandmother, Miss Helen Bracy, she became she kind of booted the colonel out the way, and she became and so you look at the pictures of her and my mom pinning me on, and just booted the colonel out the way. So that was one of those memorable moments of life. You know what I mean? So I became a second lieutenant, and I had to go do my military time. I went down to Fort Eustis, Virginia,
Okay.
but but I also, right before graduation, I guess for college, Robbie, who later will become my wife, was
Hmm.
pregnant with our first child,
Okay.
Angelo, and so so when I moved on, I was gonna be gone, what I mean. But
Mhm.
when she was pregnant, and I knew we were having a son, and what I mean, I had to make decisions on life. I know I
Right.
wasn't ready to get married, so my next mission was, I need to be a father. So
Right.
I'd kind of signed up for the Atlanta Police Department, and
Okay.
they hired me while I wasn't even here. I was in Virginia doing my military stuff, and I mean, I got hired while I was in Virginia, and they just said, "Hey, let us know when you're coming down, and we got a spot." And so I moved back down as soon as I finished up my military time. I came right down and became an Atlanta police officer because, I had to be close to my son. I mean, I wasn't gonna be a stay away father. I had to be here.
Right. Right. No, I totally understand. Now, how many years were you in the military?
um, Overall, probably like 15 with the. I was in the reserve for quite a while.
Hmm.
I had to serve so much time on there, and so yeah, about 15 years, combined.
And what branch was it?
I was an army. I was an
Oh,
army transportation officer.
okay,
Yeah,
transportation officer.
transportation officer. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, it was a great experience. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Again, one of those things, you take every little piece of life that just teaches you different things. And it just taught me so much about leadership. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
challenge yourself so much, in different aspects. So, and then you had to become a leader of men, you know what I mean? I was
Right.
fresh out of college, 22 years old, really
Mhm.
21. And, and I go up there, and I'm a doggone platoon leader, over other grown men, and so it's amazing.
Wow. So then you joined the police department. Let's talk about
Yeah.
what was your position at the police department?
So I was Atlanta police officer. I was on the police force for about 9 years. About 3 years we did undercover details
Hmm.
around the city, which was really cool. The guy that you saw on the show, MJ Lewis, was a guy who I used to work with when we were working plain clothes details, man. And he taught me so much about policing. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And how to do these different, from undercover and regular police officers totally different. You know what I
Okay.
mean? But it's, what I mean, just the strategy of it is totally different.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I was a police officer for about 9 years, and in these streets, and it was another experience of life. You know what I mean? That just taught me whoa so much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In terms of
Yeah.
just life and the day to day stuff and answering those calls, and but it gives me a perspective. You know, like when I talk about things, um, you know, being a police officer gives you just so many different perspectives of when I watch news and things of that nature, I can see things that the average eye is not seeing, you know what I mean? Because you come from that environment as well. So you just have, you know, different ways of seeing things as opposed to just somebody who just, you know, anti-police.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that
Right.
because I want to talk about, you've been a police officer or yeah, you've been in the police department before, and then now you're not. So
Right.
you've been on both sides. And
Right.
when you turn on the TV and you see a lot of what's been going on, especially stuff like the George Floyd case,
Mm.
what is, can you expound a little bit on how you feel about those types of situations?
Well, you know, all the situations are different. Um, just reading this comment by JT, but all these things are different. You know,
Mhm.
every situation is different. You know, the George Floyd thing is, to me, there's only one way of looking at that, and that's just murder. You know what I
Right,
mean? There's just no other way of looking at it. But there are a lot of incidents that do occur where I can see the other side. You know what I
right,
mean? And when I talk to people, you know, they have a problem. Sometimes you know, and we talk about this on this other show we'll talk about later, but you know, but we just talk about these kind of things because, you know, I can give you the real, but you may not really want to hear the real. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like there's certain cases where I've said, hey, this person's not gonna get convicted. You know, they'd be like, oh no. I'm just telling you by
right,
the letter of the law, this
right.
is what it is. You know what I mean? And so, you know, so I just have different perspectives on certain things. You know what I mean? It just depends on the case. But the George Floyd is just murder, you know. But there are also some situations where I think that it's unfortunate that certain things happen.
Right,
But also I have to say, if that person didn't do XYZ, it may not have led to this. You know what I mean? You
right,
know, you take kids at downtown Atlanta, you know what I mean? Although it looked bad, you know what I mean? The kids got tased, but they're not seeing the other side of how many times those kids were asked to move out that location. You know what I'm saying? How many times were they told to leave? And then people they don't see the side of those police officers who are, you know, on duty for 12 plus hours, and they're put in situations that they shouldn't even been put in. You know
right.
what I mean? And that happens a lot of times where those police officers put in situations that they just shouldn't have been in the first place. They're put in bad spots. You know what I mean? They're asked to resolve it. And you know, and it just goes back to what they know. So
You
every situation is different.
the person who helped me to understand that, because I was just like a lot of other people, right? You see those types of videos, and the first thing you do, your emotion kicks in, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
so me only seeing one part of the story goes out the window because
Right.
I'm emotional. Well, Ken Strader, he works in the police department in Athens. They call him
Mhm.
Sarge.
Not offhand.
Okay, well, he works in it. He's now, I think he's now a chaplain. He passed Sarge, and we still call him Sarge.
Right.
But he is the person who called me. And what you just said is what he wrote down to me. And it
Mm.
changed the way I think totally. And he explained to me that, when the videos come out, you only see one side. So you
Correct.
need to take a breather, give it a minute, because it's going to all come out.
Right.
And sometimes we all know about media, not saying
Sure.
all media is bad, but
Sure.
I've told somebody recently it's an idiot box, right? Because if you watch too much of it, it mentally programs you to think, the way they want you to think. And some people don't.
That's the goal.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
goal. That's the
that's
goal.
the goal. That's the goal. So if you know that they show certain things to get certain reactions, it's you got to study it. But anyway, so
Absolutely.
Ken called me one day and broke it down just the way you broke it down. And not just about George Floyd, but about a lot of stuff that we see. And like you said, you're not saying that because there's another side, you're going to always side with the police because you were once in those shoes. What
Right.
you're saying is that because you were a police officer at one time, you currently have a security company, that you've been trained to look at every angle.
Absolutely.
Am I saying it right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And look at every angle, and then just knowing what those laws mean, you know what I mean, and what some of those do's and don'ts, because you hear people always say, "Well, I know the law," but do you? You know what I mean? And
Look, we're gonna prove, the conversation that we had before we came live.
right,
We're ready to prove to people that they don't know it.
right.
So we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. So okay, so let's talk about the security company, because you also own a security company. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So Priority One Security was started in 1995 while I was still a police officer, and it's I started off doing private security for different people, entertainers, what have you. We were doing a lot of the face artists. We were doing details with TLC and a lot of these at the time up and coming artists that all blew up. You know what I mean? But so that's how we started doing security. And I say we. I have a business partner, Lee Moore, and so we were. I was talking with Too Short one night at Club 112, and Lee overheard the conversation. We were talking about a security detail I was gonna do for him, and he approached me and was like, "Man, how are you doing? Security?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing da 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 da." And he's like, "Yeah, I want to do, And so we kind of linked up, and it's crazy because him and I worked in the same precinct, but we didn't necessarily communicate all. You know what I mean? We all had mutual friends, and so him and I hooked up, and we started Priority One Security, and we started off. It's a funny story. We started off with just one employee, a family member. It was Lee and I, and one of our first security contracts was, guess what? Uptown Comedy Corner, when it was on Peachtree Road. That was one of our first security contracts.
Are you serious?
Yeah. We had one employee, dude named Durion London, who actually went to West Georgia. He was my first roommate at West Georgia. He was our only employee. And
wild.
Yeah. I met comedian Earthquake at I know I'm jumping the gun on an Uptown story, but it's how the Priority One really blew up. But we started doing security there, and then we got a call about doing a security contract for a complex, Jonesboro South.
Okay.
And back then, Jonesboro South was better known as Little Vietnam. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was the Wild Wild West. And so they asked us, hey, we got a security detail. We need 4 officers, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Can y'all handle it? Keep in mind, I said I had one employee. But my answer was, absolutely. Absolutely, we can handle it. You know what I mean? So we get on the phone and we calling up all the friends, everybody, hey, family, frat. Hey, look, I got a detail. You know what I mean? This is what it's paying. I need da 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 da. And sure enough, man, we were ready. By the time that contract started, within less than a week,
that's what I'm talking about.
I had enough people to go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were rolling.
I feel you. I know that's right.
Absolutely. Didn't hesitate. I didn't hesitate. So
let me ask you this question. So when you call those people, did they have to have any certification to work with your company to do that?
Sure, they did.
Oh, gotcha.
Of course, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. But we had all that.
Say, look, if you didn't have all that, you were going to get all that.
Hey,
right?
Sometimes you got to work backwards, right?
No,
sometimes you got to work backwards. We start here, but then we go back and So by the time everybody had what they needed,
I
you know what
got
I mean. But at the moment, we had to provide 24-hour days, 7 days a week for people, and one of the hardest projects in Atlanta. And
you. Right.
but that's kind of how Priority One was created. Um, and that's kind of what we stand by to this day. 25 years later, we whatever the detail is, we'll make it happen. Yeah, I mean, we make it happen, and we made that happen. And but we took pride in that particular site because after being out there for 6 or so months, we made such an impact. The school buses weren't dropping off kids at Jonesboro South. They would drop kids off at the corner. They wouldn't even come into that property.
Wow.
Getting a piece of delivery, anything like that was out the question. Wasn't nobody coming in here. I
Wow.
mean, it was that bad. And
Mm,
6 months in, the school buses were coming in, dropping the kids off like they're supposed to. They were bringing our guards cakes and pies and drinks, and what I
yeah.
mean, the Pizza Man could deliver again. And they actually came out and did a news article. I think it was, I don't know if it was ABC or Fox. One of them came out and did an article, a whole news story on the property because of the change that had been made in a 6 month
Right.
time. And so from that particular
Wow.
contract, it grew from Jonesboro South to we added on Bankhead Courts, we added on Herndon Homes, we added on. At one point, we had just about every AHA portfolio, the whole
Mm,
AHA portfolio for security. And then we also had an off-duty detail. We use off-duty officers called the Impact Team that patrol. So we made a serious impact on a lot of Atlanta Housing Authority properties during that time.
wow. So do you still do private detail?
I do, but not as often.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we kind of focus on more government type buildings and
Okay.
corporate type buildings. You know what I mean? Doing those private details, those a lot of times the person you're dealing with is okay, but they always have to have his entourage, and his entourage is where the problems always lie. You know
Okay.
what I mean? So sometimes your entourage is not worth the detail.
Right. No,
You
I
know what I mean?
understand. I understand.
Yeah, so it depends
I-
on who it is. We'll do corporate people a lot of times. We'll do stuff like that. But as far
Okay.
as like artists and stuff, it it is very seldom.
Yeah. Okay. But once I hit it big, I can call you, right?
Oh, absolutely, we got you covered. we
That's
we feel we feel comfortable with your entourage,
look, because I don't have one.
right? That's right.
So, like you said, sometimes it's those knuckleheads is what gets the artist in trouble. The artist
Man,
hasn't done anything.
I had done nothing at all, but it's them. It's
Yeah,
always them. It's always
yeah.
them.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah,
So,
but that's how Priority Ones was formed and been functioning. So
okay, and it's still going today.
25 years strong. We still
Okay.
maintaining.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we get to because I was going to ask you, how did you go from detailing? Well, let's go ahead and ask that. How did you go from detailing Uptown Comedy Corner to owning it?
so so again, we started off with Earthquake had approached me at Club 112, and I
Hmm.
always tell this story because Club 112 wasn't on my beat. I was a police officer still, right?
Okay.
Club 112 wasn't on my beat. But I always seem to make my way to Club One. My car somehow found its way to Club 112 on Saturday night. Don't know how it happened, but it was always somehow my car was always at 112 on Saturday night. So, so, so I met Earthquake out there, and we had, we talked about different things, and he asked me some security stuff and police stuff, um, and so he asked me to come by the club, and I
Mhm,
did, and I actually had an apartment on Peachtree Road at the time.
mhm.
I had a rent-free apartment. Those perks of a police officer. You know, um, so I went up there and he asked me to run the security for him, and that's how I started. So with that, Earthquake and the guy he was partners with, I don't speak that guy's name anymore, but the guy he was
Understand.
partners with at the
Understand.
time, we were all cool. Earthquake and him fell out. They had big lawsuits, what have you, and they went their separate ways. That's how Uptown was eventually sold to another guy out of Detroit, and eventually shut down. But me and
Okay.
the other guy we were cool at the time, and so I always told him, I said, man, you ever do a comedy club again? Hit me up. I'm interested.
Okay.
And years later, he hit me up and said, "Hey man, you still interested in the comedy club?" And I was like, "Absolutely."
Mm-hmm.
And him, I, and a guy named Craig, we met up there at, on Marietta Street one day, and that's where Uptown Comedy Corner was reborn.
Now that was the location where it was literally upstairs and in a corner.
The original one was upstairs in the corner, correct?
Okay.
Right by the same parking lot as Houston's. Yeah, that was the original one. That's
Okay.
the one the earthquake. That's one the earthquake owned.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I remember coming to see you, and I know we were upstairs somewhere, and it was in a corner.
yeah, that was probably the original one. Then that's when I was probably still a police officer. Then,
Well,
yeah.
that was Marietta.
Now Marietta Street was the one that I actually owned.
Oh,
After the
oh, oh,
fact.
oh. So okay, so
Yeah,
what was the location to the one I'm talking about, where it was upstairs and in a corner?
that was the original one. That was on Peachtree Road.
Peachtree Road. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think it was 2140 Peachtree Road, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
And
that was the original.
okay, that was original. Okay, because
Yeah,
I was like, that's why it's the comedy corner, because it was,
right.
it was in a
It was
corner.
literally in the corner, right? Literally in the corner. Yeah,
So then
true
you went.
story.
So when you purchased it, that's when it moved to Marietta.
Yeah, that's when, like I said, me and the other two
Marietta
guys
Street.
got together. When we got together,
Mhm.
we met at Craig. Craig knew the person that owned the land there.
Okay.
They were old buddies, and so we went out there and took a look at the place, and we decided that day we were going to go ahead and push forward with it. And at
Okay.
the time, Gary, I said his name, but that other guy had the
Yeah.
name, and so that's how we ended up opening the club. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what happened to make you decide to move from Marietta Street to Hateville? I think it was an excellent move. I love the new location. But what was the decision for that move?
So it wasn't our decision,
Oh, okay.
initially. Yeah. What
Okay.
happened was developers bought the property, bought the land, and
On Marietta
they
Street.
on Marietta Street,
Okay. Okay.
and they told me, when they bought the land, I went up there and met with them in their office and said, "Hey, listen, we about to do a rehab in this building.
Hmm.
Is there any chance y'all can do any kind of development in the next 2 to 3 years?" They said, "Oh no, Angelo, you're good. You're good. It'll be 3 years before we even look at that space." 6 months later, I get a
Wow.
letter. I get a notice saying, that they're gonna be demoing the property by November, and I'm like, November? You know what I mean? I'm like, I just met with you, and so I
Wow.
went back up there, and we had to beg, fight, and plead to get them to keep it open to the end of the year. That year, I told them, we need at least be able to go to New Year's Eve. You know what I
Right.
mean? The end the year right. But yeah, but they bought the property and built some condos out there. So
I did not
yeah,
know
so
that.
yeah, they built condos out there, and they did it, with the premise of, we had brought, Uptown's brought so many people
Yeah.
to that space, so it
Hmm.
makes the space look like it's more valuable to the outside looking in. Because like, man, people like they'll come, but they were coming, for the show.
Right.
But
Right.
you can look at that place now. They built those condos, and I don't know what their rent is for. They got the retail on the bottom of them, but I don't think there's
Oh,
not
wow.
one space. I don't think there's one space rented under there. You know what I mean? I don't think it's been 3 years, and I don't think there's
Wow.
one space rented. The apartments are probably half full at best. So but yeah, but that's how we.
Mm.
So when I got that notice, I knew I had to find somewhere else to go, and
Hmm.
so I've been eyeing that place for a minute. You know what I mean? Not necessarily for a comment at the time, but we've been eyeing that place because my security office is right around the corner from there,
Hmm.
and forth with the guy that once we found out who actually had the property, and he wouldn't budge. When I say he wouldn't budge, he wouldn't budge. He kept, and so for about 3 months, I would call him. Initially, I was calling him every other week,
Hmm.
and the closer we got to our date that we knew we were going to leave,
Right.
I started calling him every week, every week, every week. Hey man, you made a decision yet? Hey man, what you gonna do with this space? Hey man, just sitting here, man. You know what I mean? And so finally one day I caught him on the right day,
Hmm.
and he said he called me back because normally he never called me back. That's the first time he called me back, and he called me back and said, "Hey man, and started asking me questions, and every question he asked me, he was relaying it to someone else,
Uh-oh.
and
Okay.
so that. we got a meeting set up and boom, you know what I mean? That's how we ended up getting that space. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy getting the space, and then I didn't know the fight that I was in for being in Hateville. You know, we were in an all out dog fight to get the license out there, because what I didn't know about this guy, Josh, was that he had really ticked off the entire city.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that location was the original central station for the ATL natives. You know, that was the original central station. So that was like, you know, party zone. And so when he was started rebuilding that building, he was doing it for try to reopen Central Station, and Hateville wasn't hearing it.
Right.
So they blocked him. And he put up this sign that said, "This city doesn't want black people in it."
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And so then he put people's names up there. He literally put their name. Yeah, he put a billboard on the building, and it made CNN news. But I wasn't following Hateville. So but because of that fact, they didn't want anything in that building to survive, because they didn't want him to have any revenue. And so yes, we had a real hard time getting a liquor license there. They put me through the ringer, and I mean through the ringer, even to the point where you know, when I got my liquor license review hearing that day, I felt like I was on trial, man. The way they were coming at me with questions, I mean, I was like, wow. I just want to open up a comedy club. You know what I mean? I want to open a comedy club. So, but luckily we were able to get it through.
And now you have a good relationship with Hateville.
It's much better. It's much better. That's much better. You know, they still Hateville, but it's much better.
I understand. Well, I think it's a prime location because it's right off the interstate. I mean,
yes,
you know,
I agree.
You get on, get off. I think there's a McDonald's and a Wendy's. So if you're hungry at the end, you got something to eat. And I think there's some hotels.
Mm-hmm. And high hops, and plenty of hotels in the area. Like I said, right by every major interstate you can get to.
Right.
Having the parking was a big deal for me. You know, that's why we did the event center.
Okay.
I didn't do the event centers. I wanted to be able to do it, rent events. I did it because I wanted the parking. You know what I mean? I want all. It's literally right next to the club. Yeah, it's right next to the club. It's called Airport Event Center.
To the left or to the right?
If you're looking at the club directly, it's to the right.
That's probably what I parked in front of.
Yeah, you probably. Right, you probably did.
That's exactly where I parked at.
Yeah. But there's another parking lot on the bottom of that. And so, you know, so that gave us the entire lot, you know what I mean, that we could use, because we knew we were going to need it. So.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I see new stuff. Okay, so I've got to make sure I get in these last couple of things. Now, I know that flag football is dear to your heart. So let's talk about your experience with flag football, your team, the championships. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So, I started playing flag football probably late 90s, 90, maybe 96, maybe. 96, 97. You know, frat brother Sham was playing flag football, and it's crazy because I was in my apartment, laying on the sofa, just chilling one Sunday, and Sham just called me and said, "Man, what you doing?" I said, "Nothing, chilling." You know what I mean? He said, "Come out here and play some football." I'm like, "Football?" You know what I mean? And he said, "Yeah, we're playing flag football." And I'm like, "Flag football?" You know? So, but I went on out there, man, and it never stopped. You know, I really enjoyed it. You know what I mean? It gave a chance to, you know, and I was still in good shape back then. You know, I was still pretty fast. You know, so you know, but it was a chance to enjoy those good times with friends, and so we just kept going from there. And I took it from just a recreational little thing to something that I really true to my heart. You know what I mean? So we developed a team at the time where we started with Shan, was called Rage, but we eventually changed the name to Shockwave, and it became more of a, you know, of a family type thing. You know what I mean? We have initially was half the team was former West Georgia players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was all a bunch of guys that played at West Georgia. That's who most of the team was. And but we went on to, when you start growing and get more serious with it, you start adding more pieces, and we've developed a team now that we've become a really national competitive team.
Oh, wow.
Over the years, we won a national championship. We've been in two national championships, two other national championship games. We've
Wow.
won countless tournament championships, countless league titles. Forget about it. We won so many league titles, man. They used to give us T-shirts for a league championship.
Mm-hmm.
So I have in my closet, I have like just a rows of just league shirts, just from all the league championships we won. So yeah, we got a pretty good team. We're kind of rebuilding now, trying to get back to that real national competitive rate. But we have a good core group of guys who've been with us for a while, and so it's fun. I really enjoy it. I mean, I don't play anymore. I just coach now. I tore my Achilles. Yeah, I tore my Achilles playing. This is crazy. Yeah, in nationals, we go to national tournament every year, and we've been doing that for over 20 years. And this particular year, I was playing a 35 and up league as well as my regular team. So I didn't get hurt during my team. I get hurt in the 35 and up game. I tear my Achilles in the 35 and up game, and I'm gonna tell you something. That was it for me.
That was it.
Yeah, and it wasn't even the Achilles. It wasn't even the surgery. It was the rehab. That rehab on that Achilles. When I watched these guys play in the league, like I knew when Kevin Garnett. I mean, not Kevin Garnett. Kevin Durant tore his Achilles a couple years ago because I saw that look on his face. It's the same look that I had when I told my Achilles. When you look back, anytime you see somebody look back, it ain't good. It ain't good. When I look back, I was like, oh man. So yeah, so I just coach now, but I still enjoy it. You know what I mean? I still enjoy it.
Well, let me know if you think about creating a female league, because I would love to do something like
They
that.
have one. Let me tell you something. They have a female league that's serious. Oh my goodness, them women are serious. Oh yeah, They got a big female league. Oh yeah, they got a big female league. I mean, they
look into that, because
they
it's
serious.
to keep you in shape.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're serious about it. They love it. They love it. I mean, they got some girls out there that are really doing it too. I mean, it's pretty impressive. But yeah, they play on Sundays as well.
Have you heard of the Atlanta Phoenix, the women's football team?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, my cousin plays on that.
Really?
Yeah, they call her Tank. She's number 99. I know she's a lineman. I don't know too much about it. I know she's a lineman. And I went to go see her play one day at they was at some school in Kennesaw. And she lit somebody up. I said, okay, I see why they call her Tank.
So you see it firsthand, right?
I was like, I'm gonna see if I can get her on the show.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, she's a beast.
There's a couple girls in our flag football league that play in that league.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Them girls are real. Them girls are real with it. They're real with it.
I'm gonna have to do some stretching.
That's right.
Look, I may go from wannabe player to sponsor.
The sponsor, right? I know that's right. That's right. Yeah, they folks a lot younger and faster, man. I'm telling you, it's amazing out there. It's amazing to watch. It really is.
Yeah, I think it's a good alternative. Like at the Maury's at NCAT, and they don't have soccer. But they do have like a flag football, co-ed flag football. So it's another way for her to stay, active.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. That's good stuff.
So you have an internet show called Classic Conversations with JT and Lo. Let's talk about that show. Angelo, I attended, I missed, it's on Tuesdays, but I attended not yesterday, but last week.
Right.
And I was telling the show producer that the one thing about your show is that when you watch it, you got to make sure that all of your insurance is paid up. Because you're going to throw something. You're going to be so engaged in this show. So I really like it because the times that I have viewed it, I walk away learning something. Like we were talking about, educate and inspire.
Right.
So tell us how the show developed And when is the show, and how can people view it?
So, my buddy JT, James Thompson, Pretty Ricky, what they call him. He gonna laugh when I say that. But but JT and I, we talk all the time, and he's on my football team as well. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, he retired as well. He didn't tear his Achilles, but he joined me on the sideline as a coach. He don't play no more either. But we had been talking about doing podcasts for a while, and particularly with him because he's into his second career in life. He's become a model and actor and things of that nature, and get in front of the screen and camera. He hosts a lot of different shows, or whatever. So we've been talking about doing a podcast. So my guys at the club, JT and them, JT, you guys' comments are hilarious. With JT, we talked about he was going to do a sports podcast, and but my guys, they created a podcast room in the event center. So we have a nice little podcast studio right in the event center, and so so him and I have been talking about it, and so once that thing was done and ready, I told him, hey man, you need to come check this out.
Okay.
And so and that's kind of how it happened. Classic Conversations is something that he is true and dear to his heart. The classic. He's a classic man and all the other good stuff that with the K, because Classic Conversations with a K, 2 Ks. So
he's a noob.
That's how I started. Huh?
Is he a noob?
No, he's not a noob.
Oh, okay.
He just, you remember the Martin series. He's he's a little handsome guy. You know the Pretty Ricky guys. You know what I mean? Okay.
You said
you gotta see some of it. If you see some of his modeling, if you ever see some of his modeling stuff, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
You know what I mean? He's a model. Okay. He's a model.
Okay.
He dresses up real nice and all that good stuff. So, but so anyway, we got together and started doing this show, and the goal of the show is exactly what you said. The goal of the show is to kind of, like I said, neither one of us are experts or claim to be experts in any of these subjects, but we just want to just present different dialogue, open dialogue, conversation to get people to open up and discuss certain things that's going on in the world. We're not trying to be, you got plenty of comedy shows, you got plenty of this, but who's talking real life stuff.
Yes.
And not being judgmental, not being that stuff, just having open dialogue and let people get different views from everybody. And that's kind of how the show started out. And that's how the show, I bet. But that's how the show started, and to hear you say that and hear other people like that say that, that's the goal that we were trying to create with that show, just give different platforms and just have dialogue, just have dialogue, and we've had anything from what, the show you saw, talking about, the sexual assault things to mental health things, where we've had we've had experts on the show. My friend Alvin came on the show to talk about when we first did mental health. Alvin came on there, and I'm kicking his shirt today. I am remarkable, you know what I mean? I always shout my boy Southern Center. I know that's your product. And I know that's your product. You know what I mean? So I'm always
look, Angelo, and hopefully he will call me back, because when I started doing the Inside Perspective, I reached out to him. So now he is we put him out there.
We put him on the spot. Yeah, we put him on the spot.
Call me back.
That's right. But
so let's talk a little bit about
yes, I do, Rebecca.
He said yes. Yeah, he owns the club and the event center. That's to the right. When you're facing the club, it's to the right. Look, right. When me and Stacy parked and we thought we were being illegal, can't wait to tell Stacy if she's not on the show.
That's too funny.
Let's talk a little bit about the topic from yesterday, because I think this is important. So talk a little bit about the topic from yesterday, and then give everybody a call to action to find it and read it for themselves.
So we're talking about yesterday, the SB 202, this new bill passed by, Kemp, the governor of Georgia. And it was a closed door session passing, and the problem with this bill is that people have to really read it and understand what this bill is doing, because the main thing people are saying is, oh, you can't take water to grandma, she out there, but it's And that is a problem, that you can't take water to somebody that's standing in line for hours, and it's against the law. Can't give them nothing to eat, can't do any of those things. But it goes bigger than that.
Yes.
It's also saying that the buses that use to transport the people can't be used any longer. You can't use the buses any longer to transport people to the polls.
Right.
You know what I mean? The polls are still supposed to open to 7 o'clock. Well, they reduced it to 5 o'clock. So now people can't get off working time to get to these same polls. These same polls now where they have a limit of number of people that can come to the polls. So if you are, I don't remember the exact number, between 1,500 2,000 people in that voting poll area, well, they're going to relocate you somewhere else. And where they're going to relocate you to, because it's already limited and it closed early. Remember that other part?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this law is absolutely ridiculous, what it's doing and what it's trying to do,
Right.
and it's voter suppression at its finest. It's voter suppression right in our faces. They're putting it directly in our faces and saying, what you gonna do about it? You know what I mean? And we got to show them that we can do something about it. We talked about yesterday on the show how the Delta CEO commended the bill yesterday.
Right.
Well, he's rescinded that. You know what I mean? He's rescinded that because he heard that quick pressure. But that just lets people know the power of our voices, if used correctly, that we can make changes. You know what I mean? Because he rescinded that statement already.
Right.
So, and I think just more things can be done. It has to be done. We have to get as many people as possible to send these letters to the governor's office, to all of our state and local representatives. My boy Brandon Marsh on our football podcast about all the time is think globally, think, vote locally. You know what I mean? And that's how we have to think. We have to vote globally. We have to think this way. We have to make sure that we are not losing sight. Yes, we turned the state blue for this presidential race, but in 2 years, it's just 2 short years.
Right.
These back up. You know what I mean? Just 2 short years, and to include this governor's seat. So we got to put pressure on, because in another part of this bill that was pointed out towards the end of yesterday, at the end of the bill, it says that if they don't like the election results, that they can change it. You know what I mean? They can change the election results if they don't like it.
So
I mean, do we understand?
Forget the water, forget the pizza, forget the buses. That one right there.
Hey, this is in writing. They can change it. They can unilaterally change the decision of the other people. So I mean, this has to be thrown out. I mean, we have to fight this. We have to fight this tooth and nail, and we got to make this state feel that pressure. This government has to feel that pressure, and the only way these people feel anything is with money. That's the only way they feel anything. It has to be a financial hit. That's the only way they're gonna feel it. You know what I mean? So I do hope that enough pressure from entertainers, athletes, these churches who've been too quiet for too long, have to put pressure on these people. If we lose the All-Star game, oh well, they need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the Masters relocates, oh well. You know what I mean? But that's what it's gonna take. Something has to really hit this governor in the pocket to make something change for this stuff.
Yeah, and it's sad, but I try to tell people that always follow the money. Follow the money.
Simple as that.
And I believe that's what was behind it. Can you speak a little bit about, because before the show we were talking about the young lady that they carried out that was banging on the door, and how it was a special, he had called a special session so the rest of the people in the house was not there. Can you speak just a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the reason she was banging on the door was because she was a Democrat, and they locked them out of this hearing. It was a closed session that the only people that were in there were Republicans. They only invited the Republicans to vote on this thing. You know what I mean? How do you close a session in a democratic system and just say, well, you don't get to vote? You know what I mean? Well, we got enough votes already, so we don't need you. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. They're supposed to have a voice. And all she was doing was saying, hey, we need to talk about this. And so for you to have these 2 state troopers to pull this 5'4" woman out of there, and then for this state trooper to literally, and being a former police officer, come on, he really took his shoe off and took a picture of his toe. I mean, for real, he took a picture of your big toe. Come on, man. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling. And they charged a woman with felonies. This woman being charged with felonies, and they haven't dropped the charges with felonies. I mean, it's like it's madness. It's madness. It really is.
Angelo, we gotta stay woke.
We gotta
We
stay
gotta
woke.
stay woke because these games have been played over and over again, and I think that's why we are in the predicament that we're in as a people, is because we don't, like you said earlier, we don't know the laws, right?
Right.
And so if you don't know the laws, you don't know how to use the law to benefit you. They do.
Right.
We don't.
They do. Absolutely.
If there's
Absolutely.
one last thing you would like to tell the audience, what would that be? I'm gonna let you close it out.
Well, stay true to yourself. Whatever it is you want to do in life, stay true to yourself. Don't try to please no one else but that person in the mirror. You know what I
Amen.
mean? Give 100%. Give 100% effort to you. Make you as great as you can be. Everything you want to do in life, you can do it. Don't ever let nobody tell you can't. You know what I mean? And just keep pushing forward. Love life. We only
Yeah,
get one of these things. We only get one of these things. You know, take
that's it.
advantage of every moment of it.
Yeah, and you can't do anything about tomorrow. You have to live in the now.
Right now.
That was a big thing that I had to learn. It's all about the now. You want the future to be bright, but the future won't
Sure.
be bright if you don't do the right things in your now.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
well,
Absolutely.
I'm going to end the show. You hold on. Don't you go anywhere.
Yes,
Thank,
ma'am.
thank you, Angelo, for being tonight's guest and closing out our 12-year anniversary month. I'd like to thank all of the guests for coming, the viewers for coming and celebrating this month with us. I am Tina Dawson with True Blue Designs, and we will see you next Wednesday, same time, same place. Good night.